Welcome to the Climb Podcast, where we are diving into taboo topics and redefining the rules for women of color leaders. Get ready as we share the stories and amplify the voices of extraordinary women of color. From navigating workplace challenges to celebrating triumphs, on this podcast, we've got you covered. So buckle up and join us as we embark on today's empowering journey. Welcome to the Climb Podcast, where we empower women of color in their pursuit of leadership and managerial roles. I'm your host, Felicia Smith, the founder of The Climb, a 501c3 organization that is committed to increasing the number of women of color in leadership and managerial positions. Each week on the Climb Podcast, we dive into strategies, stories, and experiences that help to propel you forward and ascend to leadership positions. So today is one of my favorite episodes, and if you've been listening to the podcast, you've experienced the Her Climb episodes. And this is really where we get to feature extraordinary women who have reached those places in their career that some of us aspire to be, right? And we get to opportunity to ask them about their journeys, their experiences, sacrifices, lessons learned, all of the good things. So today I am so excited to have I'm calling her a new friend of mine, Desiree Goldie. Desiree, welcome to the Climb Podcast.
Oh my gosh, I love that I'm a new friend. Yes, I am so excited. I am so excited to be here. This was the great end to a very long day. So I'm thrilled to be here.
Yes. So I'm going to get into your bio and then I'm going to tell them all how we met. Okay. So Desiree is the director of marketing at ZRG's Embedded Recruiting and Interim Divisions. She has dedicated her career to reshaping workforce dynamics and promoting inclusive environments. With a tenure that began in 2020, Desiree has been instrumental in integrating DEIB, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging strategies in recruiting practices, ensuring that every employee feels valued and heard. So important. In addition to her role at ZRG, Desiree is the founder of the Do Better Consulting, a firm specializing in hiring strategies, DEIB initiatives, and leadership training. Her consultancy focuses on challenging leaders to do better and fostering a culture of accountability and growth. Desiree's expertise has made her a sought-after speaker, and I know why, guys, and you'll know after this why, an advisor, and particularly on the topics related to combating homophobia, sexism, racism, and bad leadership. A queer Black woman, Desiree brings a unique and vital perspective to her work. She is a certified diversity recruiter through AIRS and was recently named 2024 Top HR Innovator by Pillar. Congratulations. Her passion for creating equitable workplaces extends to her personal life, where she engages in activities ranging from reading and writing to exploring new shopping adventures. Desiree's approach is direct, questioning and challenging and encouraging others to reflect and take actionable steps towards improvement. Her tagline is Do Better People. And if you follow her on LinkedIn, you're going to see hashtag Do Better. I love it every time. And it encapsulates her commitment to fostering better workplaces and communities. When she's not transforming organizational cultures, you can find her participating in rising leader forums or managing her eclectic Poshmark shop, where she curates fashion with a focus on feminine beauty. I need to visit your shop. I love Poshmark. So again, welcome. I want to tell you guys, this is one of the stories that I love of how I met Desiree. So last year when I was starting the climb, I was like, hey, I want the climb to be associated with dope women, right? So I'm on social media, I'm looking at LinkedIn profiles, people I'm connected with, and I was connected with Majean Lorth, who is the founder of Transitions Well Done. And I just went in her DMs, hey, I love your profile. I love what you're doing. Let's connect. Me and Majean connect. I fall in love with her also, an amazing human being, someone who I also now will call friend. And I was telling Majean, I said, I really want to do like this panel. Who are some great people? And she's like, hey, I got two of them. And in comes Desiree. And we met the first call, and you don't know this, her spirit met mine. And I'm the kind of person that I love when I'm on a call and after the call I feel challenged. Like, hey man, she got her stuff together. Like, I want to do this thing. And just her spirit, her I'm going to use hashtag do better, planning everything in order was everything that I desire and everything that I enjoy. And so ever since then, we've been connected. The second part about Desiree that I love is her intentionality, because after our second meeting, she said, hey, I want to be a part of the organization. I want to be an intentional piece of it. And so Desiree is also an executive champion of the climb. But not only that, she's also now a part of our very first cohort of Standing on Our Shoulders Leadership Development Program, not just as a champion, but also leading a session on networking and all of the good stuff. So she is fully committed to this organization. I really appreciate her. And so without further ado, Desiree.
Oh my gosh. It's a lot
I
to live up to, man.
know. So let's just start, like, tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about yourself, your career journey. What do you want the audience to know about you?
Yeah, I think the most important thing for me is that it my path has been nonlinear,
Mhm.
right? And I think we get stuck in this idea that there's only one way to success and to leadership. And if you look at my resume, my LinkedIn, you're like, what is going on? Like, what is happening here? What does this lady want to do, or where does she want to be? And I think that, for me, it has always been a soul searching moment where I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to gain a new skill or new knowledge, and I want to jump. And I've always been really intentional, right? I believe in intentionality, intentional about how I got to that next step. So just to also give people some grace. I started my career in with a very clear idea. I was going to go work for Nike and work in Japan and do all these great things in the sports industry world when I was in college. That didn't really pan out for me. I went to my first job and I actually hated it. I, I I was called a number to call into my boss's office. He called me by a number.
What?
The racism was rampant in corporate at the time, and I just couldn't figure out my way. And it's the only
Wow.
job I've ever walked out on. I literally picked up a box, stuffed all my stuff in it. Now this is also in your youth, you make stupid decisions.
That was brave
Right?
though.
You're like, oh,
That,
I'm out of here.
but I would have felt taken aback too to be a number. I've never been a number. That would have
It
threw
was
me for a
like,
loop.
what did you just? And I didn't even, of course I didn't respond. I was like twiddling away at my desk, and they're like, he's calling you. I'm like, he's not calling me.
I have a name.
So after that interaction, and like I think I lasted another week, I was like, I can't be here anymore. Packed up my stuff and walked out, handed over my badge and walked out the door. And I kind of floundered for a while. And my friend who worked in hospitality was like, your energy, everything you bring, you'd be great in hospitality. And so, believe it or not, I went to tend bar for a long time and loved it and love the energy, the people. And I'm going to tell you, if you ever want to learn about customer service and organizational things, you should go into hospitality. It is the toughest place to manage people.
Mhm.
It is the toughest place to stay organized. It is the toughest place to please. It is really a almost soul-sucking industry at some level, right? And so I was there and I worked my way up. I managed many bars over time and actually got to the place where I was managing a bar for a large corporation, a suite of bars for a large corporation. And then I went to work for a kosher food company. I know it makes no sense, but I
Yeah, I mean, how did that transition happen? I'm just curious.
this is also about hospitality. This is also how I got really into networking, right? Is that I met so many people who owned so many things, right?
Oh,
And I
okay.
talk a lot, right?
It works to your advantage.
Right. So I met this wonderful gentleman and, he was like, listen, I got the job for you. He's like, I'm starting this kosher food organization. I really want to do these big things. And I was like, kosher? Like, I don't even know anything about anything, right? Though I had grown up with a lot of Jewish people around me, I still, didn't know anything about it. And so I went to work for him and I worked for him for 6 years. And along that period, of time, I grew from just running restaurants to becoming his director of sales and marketing. We brought many products to market that are still in grocery stores today.
Oh, wow.
And it was an exciting time for me because he was the most supportive leader I probably have had in my career. He was like, I
Mm,
want you to shoot your shot. That's why I tell people now, shoot your shot. If you think you could do it, I want you to do it. And that allowed me to keep moving forward. And I'm very ambitious as well. So that that worked it to a place where I was like, okay, these hours are insane. In hospitality and food, the hours become almost insurmountable. You're working till 2 in the morning, you're on your feet a lot of the time.
mm,
Even once I had moved to sales and marketing, it still was going to see the restaurants, going to be at the plants, doing a lot of things that just were taxing for me.
mhm.
And I realized that I think it had run its course at that time. I was like, I'm not learning anything anymore.
Yeah.
And at the time I had met my wife, we weren't married then, but she encouraged me. She's like, you know what you'd be really good at? She's like, recruiting. And I'm like, ah, sounds awful. And no, how about we don't do that? She's like, no, seriously, you would be really good at it. She's like, apply for some jobs, see what you think. And I met another wonderful person who gave me a chance in recruiting because I had over my time in hospitality recruited a million individuals, right? Bartenders, hostesses, plant people, all these things were part of my purview. And so he was like, yeah, sure. So I worked for an agency environment at the time. And just based on performance, I got offered a program manager job, took that job, and then had run its course. And I was like, okay, I don't really love this anymore. And I went to work where I work now, which is I moved into the talent operations side of
Okay.
the business, whereas more data and analytics, which I put
Mm,
actually the stuff I learned in college to use. Wow,
I
because that
know.
hadn't happened yet. So I did that. And then because of my sales and marketing background, I was offered the opportunity to be a director of marketing. Now, along the way, I have always kept diversity, equity, and inclusion as part of my role in every role that I've had back before it was even popular. And
Mhm,
so I've always added and culture to the back end of my titles because it's something I'm passionate about. And when I go to offer, I always tell people, I'm glad to take this front part of the title and know that that's the priority, but I also need to have this piece to the title to make sure that I feel fulfilled and then I'm moving the organization forward in a really positive way, able to give my insights to the organization. So
mhm.
it's been a twist and a turn here and there, and I'm not done. Everybody's like, oh, you're 50, you should just think about retiring. I'm like, nope, I'm not done, right? I think about always thinking about the next thing. And in 2020, I started my consulting company and have worked with leaders and worked with organizations really providing that inclusivity training because I don't think people really know how to do it or even really what it means.
I
Right?
agree. I agree.
They think put a lot of black and brown people on a team with some white people, stick them together, and they're supposed to work
Magic.
happily together and like
Magic.
make magic happen. Woo! Right? They're like,
And,
think they're doing the thing. And it's just not how it works, right? Um, Besides that, I am a workaholic, which I tell people not to be.
mhm,
I really stress that in so many ways because I'm always got my hands in a million things, but it's the way my brain works, right? But
mhm,
I don't think people should necessarily live their lives like that. I believe depending on who you are, balance is key,
Mm-hmm.
right? I do believe in balance. And I preach balance, though I don't do it myself. So I always do this, do as I say, not as I do type of thing,
Yeah,
right?
no, that makes sense. So let's talk about in each one of these, you had like a moment where you were like, okay, it's time for me to transition. Like, what were some key things that you think about when you're like, okay, besides the fact is you're bored, are there other things that you think about when you're like, okay, this has run its course. What's next?
Yeah, I think when I'm not learning anything, when I log in each day and it feels, and I don't mean just bored. When I say bored, it's that I'm not gaining any new knowledge, and I feel either that there will be no growth in that
Mm,
particular spot that I'm in, meaning the organization, or the subject that I'm in, right? And if the next step is something that I'm not really interested in doing, then it's time for me to make a move, right? When I was in food, the next step from director of sales and marketing was to mainly go into operations or be a general manager of a plant or do something like, and I was like, none of that sounds like anything I would want to do. So now it's time, because I am ambitious and want the next step, I need to switch, industries, careers, whatever that may be, and food ended up not being the place I ended,
mm.
right? Because I just didn't see where I was going from there. Um,
What kind of like, so first of all, I'm always impressed when you talk about your background. I think it's amazing. But I also think that there is a certain type of tenacity. I can't even think of the words to be able to say, I'm going to literally leave this industry and move into. So I'm just curious, like for someone who may be listening, who is thinking about it, but they're not sure how to make that leap. What advice would you give them, like of just changing industries almost?
Yeah, for me, I think research is key,
Mhm.
right? I think what people do is they're like, oh, this also happens a lot with teachers, right? I'm a teacher and I want to get into corporate, right? But what does corporate mean, right?
Yeah, that's a
Right?
good
And
one.
the difference between teaching and corporate. You need to, and I've coached people who have definitely made the transition from being a teacher, because I do think there are applicable skills to corporate, but it's a different world, right?
Mhm.
It's a different
Mhm.
monster. So I always encourage them to read articles about corporate culture, the negative and the positive. I encourage them to do the research of how people are paid, the time they spend at work, the average time people spend. I tell them to ask questions in the interview process. One of the things about networking that is really great, and I'm always talking about networking, but
Yes.
the one thing about it that's really great is if you're thinking about making a transition, find some people to speak to on LinkedIn,
Mhm.
right? What does your workday look like? What does it feel like? What are your goals that you're subjected to? What are your KPIs? All of those things can help you make up your mind, right? When I was thought about going to the sports industry, I would never do that now. When I talk to people who are in it, I'm like, oh no,
That's
like,
terrible.
like, I'm not nothing negative on the sports industry, but for me, it wouldn't have
Mhm.
fit anything that I thought I wanted. In my mind, I wanted it, but the reality of people talking to me, I was like, oh, I don't want any of that. Right. And so I think you would start knocking things off. And some things look really sexy in social media,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I want that person's job because they're doing this and doing that. It's not real. Like it's not, you know what I
Or it's not what
mean?
you really want. Yeah, it looks
Right. And it's
good.
not what you really want. You
Yeah.
think you want it,
Yep.
right?
So you got to
Until
do it.
you're 80 hours in, and then you're
Yes.
like, oh God, like what did I do to myself?
Yes.
You know? So I think, thinking and doing the research first, right? It is a big part of this. It's a huge part of whether you're ready to make the jump and whether you really want to make the jump. And then if you don't have that industry experience, I have taken a step back to go forward.
Mm,
And it's not always the case that you have to do that, depends on the role. But
yeah.
when you completely switch industries, my friend, she just switched industries and I kind of guided her through it. And she was probably making $180,000 at her current job. And she was trying to transition out and they wanted her to go down to like 100,000. She's like, oh, I'm not doing that. I'm like, you don't know anything about the industry.
Oh. You
You
got to
don't
be
know
able to take that
anything.
risk on yourself.
Right,
And to your point, what is it going to be long term? Maybe you'll be able to
right.
make that up a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
This is the thing I said to her, right?
Hmm.
Over time, if that's the industry you really want to be in and you see yourself as a long-term person in that industry, now if you're just making the jump for 2 years, I'm telling you no, right?
Yeah.
But if you're making the jump to make a true transition into that industry, the benefits outweigh that step back. And if you're a good performer, which I know she is, right? She'll be where she is now in 3 or 4 years just based on her work performance. And that's and that's another question. If you do take a step back, ask in the interview how a raise is
That's good.
applied, right?
Good. Yeah.
Because I've been at companies where their max is a 5% raise or 4% raise, and you can't necessarily make up that hit that you're taking. You have to
Yeah.
be really, my one thing to everyone is always focus on you and what you need to survive, to feel fulfilled, to do all
Yeah.
those things, because you can get swayed really quickly by the sexiness of something and the desire to want to be there and realize you made the wrong decision because you're not focused really on you, what
Mhm.
you need to feel present and fulfilled in a role. And for me, all of the jobs that I've taken have given me something, right? I gave them something too, but I was looking for something and I got what I wanted out of it at the end
Yeah.
of the day. And then it was time to go.
You bring up an interesting piece. Oh, a trend that I'm seeing, and I wonder if you've coached someone on, is that people are like, hey, I want to go in the workplace and I want to make $200,000. And then they take that job, and then to your point, they're working 80 hours a week or 100 hours, and they're like, well, I don't want to work that much. And so, have you experienced, like, how do you coach people through, like, hey, if you want the big, they don't give you big dollars to be, a cute mannequin. Like,
Right.
paying
I
you.
always tell people, it's so funny to me, like they're like, oh, I want to be a VP. I want to be a VP. Do you know what that means? Honestly know what that title brings. It brings dollars, yes, absolutely. But your current lifestyle, where you're sitting and you're able to log off at 5 o'clock, you get to run around with your kids, you can go to recitals, you can do all of those things, stops
Yep. Right.
immediately, right? And especially in the first year, because your whole life is proving that you deserve that title and that money.
Mhm.
Right? And that is a challenge and it changes your life, even at director level.
Yeah.
It changes your life. Ultimately, I can't explain when I started taking director titles, I was surprised how much going from an individual contributor to a manager to a director changes your life. And even
Yeah.
from manager to director it's a whole different ballgame. And I always encourage people to really think about what they want out of life. Do they
Hmm.
want to work all the time? Yeah, I'm self-proclaimed workaholic. I don't mind it, right? But not everybody wants that in their life.
That's
Not
good.
everybody sees that as a priority. When my kids were small, they were my priority. I would have never had the job. I wouldn't have done it because they were my focus. Yes, I would have wanted the money, but I didn't want to miss everything. And so you have to set priorities for yourself. And I think most coaches make people go through that priority exercise. What are your priorities? What do you need? Because if money's at the top of the list, go for it. Most people don't put naturally do not put money first,
Yeah.
right? They
Good.
put work-life balance or good bet, which is a myth, people, by the way. Work-life balance.
It is.
It's such a
It
myth.
is. It's a total myth. I agree. There's no
Total
truth
myth.
in it.
None at all. Work-life balance are like benefits or something, and then they put money. So if money's number 4 on the list or 3 on the list, why are you chasing that title and that money for something you're not going to get these other 2 things? It just
Agreed.
ultimately is not going to work.
Agreed. So while we're talking about advice, what is one thing? Because one of the segments we typically have in our episodes is someone should have told me or somebody should have told me. What is one thing you wish somebody should have told you when you went into the workforce in general that you now reflect on?
I could talk about this for hours, but I think, especially going into corporate, the corporate environment is political.
That's good.
And I wish that people who do not play the game well will not ultimately be given or succeed. I wish I had known that early on because I'm not good at that. My mouth is too big, right? Like I'm like, what do you know? Like I'm, the auntie of everything.
Mhm.
So the I wish somebody had told me that. And I also wish somebody had told me that failure is okay.
That's good. I remember, yeah.
Because I think we put this pressure on ourselves and we do it, especially in the United States, right? Hustle culture is real. We put
Yep.
these pressures to succeed and have all these things and if failure is not an option, it's seen as a weakness. And I wish somebody had told me that it was okay,
Yeah.
that it makes you stronger in the end. And as
Yes.
long as you learn it from it, it can actually help you.
Yes, it can propel you forward if
Right.
you allow it to.
If
Yeah.
you allow it to.
If you
That's the
allow it to
caveat,
and you
right?
take, yeah, I tell my mentees all the time, forget the mistake, remember the lesson. I mean, you
Right.
can cry over that spilled milk all day. It's the milk's already spilled. There's nothing you can
Right.
do about it. What did you learn? Move forward. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember in college I had I could not pass statistics. I hated that course. I
Yeah. Me too.
begged the professor to let me take it pass fail. I was horrible. I could not pass it. I took it 3 times. Okay. And I consider myself pretty smart. I just couldn't, for some reason, it didn't make sense to me, right?
Mhm.
And he came to me, he goes, you're going to keep failing at this because eventually you'll learn something, right? Because I kept refusing to learn anything from the course. Eventually I passed, but it took all my energy and it made me super depressed that I could not pass this one course, right? I was on the dean's list, right?
Mm.
Like, who doesn't pass this course, And it hit me hard for, a year, right? But if someone had just said to me, it's going to be all right, right? Failure is fine.
Yes,
Just move forward from it, girl.
exactly.
See, I still talk about it.
Yeah. But that's the thing, right? It's the lesson. You were like,
Right.
that was something that absolutely. And at the end of the day, because I used to obsess about the same thing. Like I got to be on somebody's honor roll, somebody's list. They
Yeah.
don't even put that on our resumes. What's up
I
with that?
know.
At this point,
But
no one even cares.
no one cares. I remember when they used to put the GPAs on there. They asked you for
Yes,
your
when you first
GPA.
start. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then after like 10 years, they're like, I don't care what your GPA was. What did you do
Right.
at work yesterday? What are those numbers?
Right.
You
What did you
know?
accomplish? Right. What are your results? I don't
Yeah,
care about your dean's list from 20 years ago. Thanks very
exactly.
much.
So to your point about the corporate and political, on the same note, like what's a truth about the workforce that you feel like no one's talking about? And it could be the political piece, because I think that's a huge piece that we leave out. But what is one thing that you feel like people are not talking about that's happening in the workforce?
Well, I do think it goes to the political, but it also goes to the unseen pieces of corporate, right? The backroom chats, the backroom conversations that happen about workers, about goals, about, all of the things that the common individual contributor will never hear,
Hmm.
right? I think that people at leadership level, stakeholder level, know a lot more than you know as a everyday worker. And so sometimes you hear these announcements and you're super surprised. Well, they were in the back room,
Hmm.
right? For a week, 2 weeks, deciding this stuff without you, even though it directly influences you.
Yeah.
Right. And that's that political machine that I'm talking about that's happening constantly. And it's unseen and it's scary if you really think about it, because there are 4 or 5 people at most companies making decisions for hundreds, sometimes
Yeah.
thousands of
Yeah.
people. Right. And it's always about the dollar. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care if
Hmm.
there's an HR person in the room screaming about how we need to do better for our people. It's about the dollar at the end of the day.
Totally agree. Totally agree. So what is you think is one of the biggest challenges that women of color like face in the workplace today?
So many things. I've been fighting this for so long. I don't even know where to start, to be honest with you. I think one of the biggest challenges is not, especially in leadership, is not being taken as a token
Mm,
or a DEI hire,
yeah.
or because of the big rampant 2020 push for diversity after George Floyd.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like quotas in college, right? If you
Mm-hmm.
got into college, which I went to Georgetown, and I used to have kids coming, oh, you were just let in because of the quota. It's
Wow.
the same thing as in corporate, though, right? It happens to us consistently that whether or not we're the smartest person in the room,
Doesn't
we
matter.
are still seen as that DEI hire that someone was forced to hire to
Yeah.
hit that quota on a team. Now, your company could not even have that as a requirement, and you still are seen that way. And it's a challenge that I don't think probably will ever go away. But I think we need to know that it's happening to us, and either address it with ourselves and be okay with it, or seek organizations that where it doesn't feel that way. And I think we're so grateful sometimes to have a job, that we stick at places where we feel unwanted. It's a
Yeah.
really hard road, and it's a really tough road. And I also think, Black women especially get seen as aggressive,
Mm-hmm.
and too loud, too
Yep.
opinionated, too everything, right? If they could just put two next to our name.
Yep. Two, whatever adjective you decide to
Right,
put in.
right. Whatever you
Whatever
want to
you
throw
decided,
in,
just go ahead and put it there.
right? And I I am usually the loudest person in the room, right? But that's not every Black woman,
Hmm.
right? But we have to fight that stigmatism every day.
Yeah.
And unlike a traditional white woman in leadership, though they have their challenges too, just being a woman, right? I'm not taking that away from them. But you put Black and a woman, right? That intersectionality of all of that is tough. Intersectionality in the workplace is one of the toughest things for people to manage. And then, I've got it all. I'm Black, woman, queer. I mean, you just throw them all on me, right? And to navigate that in a corporate environment and to work your way up consistently is a fight, is a fight, is a fight,
Yeah.
right? This is why I encourage, Black women, Black men, whoever, to start their own thing if they think entrepreneurship is their wheelhouse, if they think they can take the struggles,
Yeah.
because we're never going to be welcome in a place like where it's our own, right?
Agreed. Agreed.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've worked in mostly white environments, and especially since my current company, is heavily white men over 45.
Hmm. Oh, yeah. I
And
know.
so,
I know.
so every day I'm usually one of the only in a room.
And you look around.
And you're like, ugh.
I know. It's a
Some
weight.
days it gets to me,
It
right?
does. And I don't think people talk about that. That some days it is, you're sitting and you're like, ah. And
Oh my gosh, the Zoom calls, because I work remote, right?
uh-huh.
So as these Zoom calls, Teams calls come, and I just go, sometimes I'm like, man.
Yes. And the things that they're talking about that you have no interest in or no relatability to. And it's a whole thing. I think those are the kind of things that we don't talk about. That
We
some
were
days it's okay, and then some days it's like, I don't want to do this.
I know. The holidays, we were in a meeting and they were talking about ambrosia salad. Now, I don't know if you've ever had ambrosia salad, but it
No.
is a very white person thing. And so they were all in the room talking about it, and I was like, I'm not eating that. And they were like, what are you talking about? It's so good. I'm like, guys, I'm Black. We have to discuss this. I eat food with taste, but those are the challenges. And I agree with you. There are some days where I get on and sometimes I turn my video off because I'm like, I can't take it. right?
Hmm.
And I know my face is bad, right?
Yeah,
Because I have
mine
very
too. Mine
expressive face,
too.
right? So I'm like, I'm like, click, turn it off because I can't take it. And those are the challenges of getting to being, being okay with yourself enough to be able to push through that
Yes.
sometimes is really difficult and challenging on your soul.
Yeah.
Never mind your work, your performance, your productivity, whatever, on your just your soul as a human being wanting to
Yeah.
feel included and belonging and all of those things. This is why I push so hard for it in the work that I do, because there is no way a Black woman feels like she belongs in an all white, male white environment. There's just no
For
way.
sure. For
Even
sure.
if she's a rock star killer boss, right?
Correct.
You
Correct.
know,
Yeah, there's just it just doesn't happen. I don't know a Black woman who can tell me that. And if you find one, let me see that unicorn.
I know, right? I want to talk to her.
I know.
I want to know what medication she's on to make her
I
look better.
know. What
Because
is
it's
she
just not
taking before
true,
she? Yeah.
right? Right. I don't care how much we have, migrated in white neighborhoods. We live mostly in, around, white people all, and have very much turned our lives into, a world where white people kind of dominate. You'll never feel true belonging in those environments. And it is a struggle. And it is a struggle to get to leadership. And
Yeah.
that is a lot of why my path is nonlinear. Because when I think I've capped out as a Black woman, especially like in a kosher food company, like, it's time to move on,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You may never get that next role, and then you need to move forward somewhere else.
Absolutely. So the last segment that we typically have in the podcast is, what we call the mended wrong, and it's based on the whole research about the broken wrong. And so our goal is really, how do we provide women advice to help to mend that wrong and help them to climb in leadership? So if you had to leave them with 3 things that you think they need to know for the journey,
Yeah.
what would those things be?
I would say,
And it can be whatever number. It doesn't have to be 3. I just say 3.
I love you so much. I would say that, for me, the big thing, and I go back to this research thing, is do your due diligence, right? About everything, your work, your personal life, your everything, right? Do your due diligence before you jump into something. Make sure that is the right fit for you, who you are, your personality, right? Introvert, extrovert, outspoken, whatever those things are that are you, right? Write your own bio. I always tell
Yeah.
people to write their own bio, right? If you can write your own bio and that it reads like something you are confident and feel good about, right? What do you want the next part of that bio to be, right? And that's how you get to the next thing. Organization is a big thing for me. So I meet a lot of managers or ICs who are very disorganized. And if you can't stay organized as an IC, there is no way you succeed as you move up the rung, right? I believe in true intentionality in organization. That means my thoughts, my platforms I use to organize me, all of those things make you a better, more conscious and focused leader. And I will say that my organization skills are surpass many because I'm kind of neurotic, but I
Oh,
do.
I got that out the first conversation, but go ahead. I mean, yes, it's a past mine for sure.
But some semblance of order
Yeah,
is a huge deal.
absolutely.
Absolutely huge
Absolutely.
deal. And it changes how people perceive you too. If you come
For
prepared, you
sure.
come organized, people take a different view of you. And I
Particularly
always,
as a Black woman, to your point, as a Black
yeah,
woman,
yes, like
not being, you can't survive not being organized or not having your stuff together.
no,
You just
no.
won't survive.
Well, they're waiting for the misstep,
Correct.
right? So
Correct.
don't give it to them,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Correct.
Always show up as your best self. That's my
Mm-hmm.
third one, right? If you're having a bad day, it's really horrible, like today was for me.
Mm-hmm.
I had to, before we came on here, I went and did what brought me peace. which you're going to laugh, is to watch a murder show. I watched half an hour of true crime, got my head together, and came back with energy, right? Show up as your best self all the time, even when you feel like it's the hardest thing you're doing right then. Because again, they're waiting for the misstep.
For sure.
And when you show up and show the best that you can be, they see you as someone who gives full effort, even if it's not true, right? And they see you as somebody potentially who could move into leadership and lead teams.
Yeah.
The first thing I'll leave you with is that, management isn't for everyone and leadership isn't for everyone. And I think people think they want these titles. Again, we've talked about that at length, but leading people takes empathy and understanding and intentionality and authenticity, right?
Yeah.
And it takes work, and people are human and they're flawed.
Yeah.
And you have to put up with all of it as a
Mm-hmm.
leader.
Yeah.
And that is not for everyone. So if it's not for you, find a different way to climb the rung, but it is not for everyone. And if you get into it and you realize it's not for you, that is okay.
Absolutely. And tap out.
Tap
out. I prefer you just tap out.
Those would be mine.
Oh, I love that. I love all of those so much. And to your point, I think that's the biggest piece about what you and I are endeavoring in with this leadership program is the ability for them to learn and then say, either this is what I want to do or I don't. And it's okay to say, I don't, because you don't want to be in a situation where you're there and you don't want to be there because it's miserable.
It is miserable.
It's miserable. So first of all, thank you so much. So many gems. I'm so excited. I'm pumped for our partnership and the leadership program off of this podcast. I'm so super excited. Tell the audience how they can find you, how they can connect with you, all of the things, Desiree.
Yeah. So I had a long list of places that you could find me, but that is no longer true as I've deleted Facebook and Instagram now due to some policy changes and the energy I don't like. So now you can find me on Blue Sky at Do Better People, of course.
Okay.
On LinkedIn, you can find me Desiree Goldie. My profile pops right up. I think I'm one of the only. So it's easy to find me there. And my website is dobetterconsulting.net. So you can find me there as well.
And I will put all that information in the show notes. So please connect with Desiree. I follow her on LinkedIn. It's amazing content. It's always makes you think and challenges you. So if you're looking for someone who gives you some thought if you feel challenged, make sure you follow her on LinkedIn. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So excited.
You brightened my day.
You did too. I'm telling you, it's natural. But thank you so much, climbers, for listening and viewing, because sometime I do video, sometime I don't. But until next time, make sure that you also follow us on Join the Climb on all platforms, whether that's LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook. And until next time, keep on moving and keep on thriving. See you later. Thanks for tuning into the Climb podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us on wherever you listen to podcasts. For updates and behind-the-scenes content, make sure you're following us on Instagram and LinkedIn at Join the Climb. Until next time, keep climbing and keep thriving, sis. See you next episode.